that's right. Oh, hey, Ray just disappeared on us. Sorry about that. A little rambunctious juncture there. Um, so to your point, Bill, because you were going to mention, hey, we should do something. We roll a little bit at the beginning, the little countdown, because it actually takes, I don't know, 20 seconds for the all the different networks to hook up to the live feed. And so that's really just like sitting there. Hopefully people will see that and still be interested. But anyway, welcome to The Truth About Marketing. I'm Pete Monfre, my host, Bill Lowell, uh, the wonders of technology. So today we're talking B2B marketing like we do every Thursday at 11 o'clock on LinkedIn. Not because we that beginning just threw me out. Not because we have to, but because we want to expand your knowledge of marketing and make better decisions in your business. So here's the thing, man. Like last week, we were all queued up to do this, right? And I was going to be like, hey, man, what's the weather like behind the cheddar curtain? Because Bill is in Wisconsin, which we like to call behind the cheddar curtain. And it just so happened that last Thursday, right at this time, we were having what we now are calling the tree apocalypse, and we had freezing rain. So let me show real quick what I'm talking about here. So this is the cacti out in the yard, and that is a ½ inch of ice and completely encasing the cactus and literally everything else. This is the tree across the street. And I said, if I go dark, it's because our power went out, right? So this is the tree across the street. This is that tree, what it looks like right now. And I said, if I go dark, and I don't think it was 30 seconds later the power went out.
Ew.
And I got a text from you right away. Did your power go out? I'm like, yeah. And it stayed out. But yeah, there's downed trees, branches, huge trees just broke from the weight of that ice. It was unbelievable. So anyway, that was last week's joke. The weather here now is beautiful. I don't know about you. No, oh wait, you said now you're getting it.
We're getting snow, but it's like rain and snow, so it's not gonna be too bad. But it feels like just like a rainy, snowy day today. So
Well, you choose to live there.
yes,
I'm teasing because I
that
used to live there. That's why I know Bill. Um, I remember my
that's
car getting stuck in the Monfre parking lot. Do you remember it used to have a really long,
yes,
stark entrance off of Water Street? And I
yeah.
had a new Corvette, and it snowed during the day while we were in the office, and I literally could not leave with my car. I had to get another ride and leave the car there. So, but anyway, today's episode about relationship marketing, right? What does that mean? What does it mean to you? Um, they're saying I can be a little louder, so let's turn that up a little bit. But this is what I love. I've heard this a million times. Marketing doesn't work for us. Our business is all relationship driven. And I think to myself, how unfortunate this otherwise intelligent person has no idea about the potential of using marketing approaches to drive more referrals and maintain longer, more profitable relationships. Then I realize my mic is hot. But my point still stands. Um, when I think of marketing, I mean, the very core of it is all about the relationship to your customer. So how do you get this to this point where we have it's mutually exclusive? Well, we're relationship driven. We don't do marketing. What are you kidding? Now 50% of those people think it's sales. But anyway, I thought it would be a good discussion today. We're talking about starting relationships, nurturing relationships, strengthening relationships. Um,
Yeah,
and you had an interesting point earlier before we went live, which I've now forgotten.
it's okay. I, I just said it was one of my favorite topics to chat about. So one of the things that I was just saying is that a lot of times organizations get so busy in doing their work for the customer that they don't take time to step back and let the customer know what it is that they're doing or what they accomplished or any of the other good things that are about that. And all of a sudden, in a way, they almost go into like this hole and people go, what have you done for me lately? Why aren't you doing this when technically you might have really been doing a lot of work for them, but they just haven't heard from you.
You
And
know,
so that was my point. It's like relationship driven can be like we were talking about, Pete, so many different things, but you
right. I
can't
mean, it
forget
comes
about the
back
customer.
to what do you mean by relationship? And most people think meat relationship, meat
Yeah.
sacks. It's like,
Yeah.
no, this is what, so this is the equivalent of, hey, how are we going to grow this company? Let's hire three more salespeople, right?
Yeah.
Brute force, I call it, right? Well, yeah, you could do that. And sometimes it works, sometimes it's not, but it is the most expensive way and also the least scalable way to get a message out. See, that's where marketing is supposed to come in, where it really helps you scale your message and measure what's happening. But maybe the outcome you want from your marketing is stronger relationships, right? Longer lasting, higher transaction, average transaction. Marketing, I was saying, can be a hose. Like, what fire do you want to put out? You want to put out that fire or this fire? I mean, what is it that drives your business? And I think that's where these folks don't understand. I make fun of them, of course, because I make fun of everyone. But uh, it, you know, it's a lot of the same ideas, but it's just the output that is different here. And
Yeah.
so when you look at it that way, it's like, oh, tell me more about this marketing. We work on relationships.
One of the things, if I can just jump in, that kind of drives me crazy, and I think it goes back to your earlier point when you were talking about, oh, we're just going to hire some more salespeople to do that. You know, I think if people were, whoever the listeners are right now, if they're here now and they're listening to this and they're going, why is this important to me? I would submit to you that ask yourself this question: are you a vendor in the eyes of your customer, or are you perceived as a partner? And if you're a vendor, you got a whole lot of work to do. And if you're a partner, then obviously you probably have already done some good relationship building. And then Pete and I will probably just talk about helping you to refine some of the things that you're doing right now or adding some things to the equation. But if you're perceived as a vendor where your business is transaction oriented, we have a lot to discuss and
Well,
probably take us 10 podcasts.
your value perception, yeah, that is a subject for 10. Um,
Yeah.
but your value perception there, I think, is what you're getting at is vendor versus trusted advisor. Sandler calls it the relationship curve, and it's a curve
Exactly.
because it's easy to slide from advisor to vendor,
Yeah.
and so a vendor is only as good as the last thing that they did, where an
Mm-hmm.
advisor has a higher. So you talk about relationships; they have a longer lifespan. You know,
Mm-hmm.
they charge premium pricing. There's a lot of advantages for being at the top of the curve. Um, but I think when we're talking B2B and where relationships are important, it still doesn't take away that you have to still maintain those physical relationships. But think about this: how many people can one person contact, have a meaningful dialogue with in a given month? 100, 200.
Yeah.
Somebody's really on the ball, I don't know, 300. No, you know, we have clients that are hitting email to 50,000, 100,000 people. You know, it's insane that companies still throw salespeople at a problem that really should be a balance. If I'm looking at the cost of acquisition for a company, I'm really
Mm-hmm.
looking for a good balance between the two, sales costs and marketing costs. Because if I see one of them's outsized, I know there's a problem there. And usually it's sales that's outsized because salespeople are expensive.
Yeah.
See, we reveal important things in the show. Salespeople are expensive.
Yeah. And you just talked about something I think is really important too. And everybody has heard this, but I don't know if they put it into the proper perspective with regard to this relationship marketing. But just like you were talking about, it costs a heck of a lot more money to go out and get a new customer, whether that's through the salespeople or other channels, than it is to take good care of your existing customers and maybe get more business out of them, or at least maintain that relationship. So, but everybody's, like you were saying, everybody's so busy, whether it's hiring salespeople or doing everything else, chasing after the new stuff where maybe some of the best stuff could be right in front of you if you just strengthen that
They're so
relationship or
they're so
expanded it.
busy burning money that
Yeah.
they can't. Well, let's get specific about this. I
Yeah.
mean, uh, the phenomenon we're talking about here is that these marketing things that you do, um, we both advocate for an integrated strategy. You don't just do one thing, you do a system of things so that the customer in the middle of that system thinks,
Yeah.
holy shit, these guys must be great. I keep hearing about them everywhere. Well, that's because we're putting you everywhere, that customer is. But that equates to more desirability, higher value perception. Um, Marketing's good at that. So they might see you in social media. That's a touch. They might get an email from you. That's a touch. They might see you speaking at a conference. That's a touch. Read about you in the business journal. That's another touch. Finally, at some point, maybe they contact one of your sales reps or something, right? But these things, social media, email, media, can be a proxy for meat sack. They're proxies, right? So people perceive it as the same strength of relationship when maybe they don't really know you at all, but they've been getting your email for 10 years.
Yeah.
That's just as strong of a relationship. So
Mhm.
is marketing a relationship mutually exclusive? Doesn't seem like it so far. And I think in the
But
post we give some things, some 4 or 5 things that maintaining relationships. One of them is brand awareness, right? If you just
right.
want to spread the word, uh, I think of the music business. One of the things we did is we always had when we had a band back in the day, we always made sure we were in all the listings everywhere because people would be like, I keep seeing these guys everywhere. We'd make up gigs that when we didn't even have gigs, we just list them. But part of that too was if you're doing a really good job of this, people tend to talk about you, right? So it's like it's
Exactly.
this expanding vortex of buzz that can be created. And hopefully you're in control of your brand somewhat.
Mhm.
You can't be completely, but a little would be good. Um, you know, uh, and then those brands and look, a brand, I say brand, right? It could be product, it could be company, it could be, you work for IBM. Are you Frank or are you an IBMer?
Yeah.
Just the question you got to ask yourself, Frank. Uh, but usually Frank's pretty well trusted, right? He's at the top of the curve, right?
Mhm.
They're getting a lot of engagement from their customers. Um, and all of this is a competitive advantage, I think. And so it's like, I guess why I wanted to start off with this idea that, and I made fun of it, but it's true that I do hear it a lot that, look, we're all relationship, right? We don't,
Mhm.
marketing, we don't got to do, part of it I think is ego. Like we don't have to tell people about ourselves.
Right.
Um, but you had a few other things, I mean, you have deep experience in this area in terms of creating the types of programs uh, that build trust. Well, so
Well,
take it away.
I'll give you a couple insights, and I'll react to a couple things that you said, which I think is really important. You started discussing having people talk about you, and building those relationships. So, but that's part of like getting that word of mouth going. And so it's like you've gotta have an increase in what we refer to as those touch points, like you were talking about, Pete, whether it's an email campaign, social media. I mean, we need to be staying in touch, but um, how else are you going to build loyalty? How else are you going to get referrals if you're not staying in touch or being top of mind with that brand awareness when somebody thinks about your organization or your products that they call on you? So I think that
Well,
that's all
it can't
critical for
it
this.
can't always be a person calling you either, because
Right,
again,
right.
that's the most expensive thing. So,
Yeah,
a good marketing program is a proxy for those touches, which is
yeah,
perceived just as strong as a regular relationship. And
yeah,
so then you mentioned consistency.
yeah,
So
for
tell
sure.
tell me about that.
Well, I mean, there's an oldie but goodie book that was written probably 25 years ago by Jan Carlson called Moments of Truth. And one of the things that he talked about was that in a given day, there could be like 50,000 different touch points where somebody touches your organization. It could be through a website. It could be talking to a customer service rep. It could be reading a brochure. It could be, you name it, but all of these interactions. And to your point about consistency, it only takes but one to not be consistent or to have an issue where somebody says, "Uh oh," and then all of a sudden you've got a ching against your brand. And then
Right.
is it another one, you know? And it's like
Well,
you go ahead.
I think, and I think I've talked about this before too, where it's not like they go, oh, hey, there's an inconsistency here. You know,
Right.
it's
Exactly.
it's more like their gut is like, I don't know about these guys,
No,
or
or
worse, I don't know what these guys do.
yeah. Or, you know what? I had a really good experience like the first couple of times, and I don't know what happened, but I've had a bad experience now or something like that. And it sets up red flags, which is not what you want to do when you're
Right.
building a strong relationship. So one of the other things though that I think is so important, Pete, and you've talked about this, and I'm going to feed this to you, but people at different levels in their business or where they're at different stages of utilizing your product probably need different types of communication. And
Uh,
so maybe somebody just learning about you or starting out might do some things, but like we get a lot of our customers sometimes, or prospects, I should say, where they say, oh, we're just too busy. We don't, like you said, we don't need marketing. We don't need to do anything. We are swamped. And I always say, you know what? You still need to do, then you might want to increase your touch points and stay in touch with those customers because you're probably too busy to stay in touch with them, aren't you? So,
that's right.
so I'm going to feed it to you, but you know this. I mean, we just have a client that we've been working with right now. Different points along the way, they need different types of media,
And
you
they may
know?
have different communication preferences too.
Yes,
You know,
yes.
I think that people might perceive this as we're saying, give them a call and be like, hey, how's it going?
Yeah,
Like, no, don't do that. That's something I should ring the bell on. Don't do
yeah.
that. It's our
Hey, that's cool.
punitive
I like that.
it's our punitive bell.
Yeah,
We're trying to Pavlovia in this thing.
yeah,
Um, but we're not talking about. That's why this is so hard. If you could just call somebody and be like, "Hey, man, what's going on?" and they're like, "Hey, well, we got 100 grand to spend. Hey, let's do," and you're done. That'd be great. That's not how business works. It's a lot harder than that. You have to bring some value with you in that.
mhm,
If you're going to follow up with somebody and you're going to maintain a relationship, what are relationships based on? Mutual value.
yeah.
We could do a whole episode on things that repel relationships. So that'd be good
That'd be fun.
because
We should
that's
do
an
that
endless.
just to be some contrarian sometimes.
It'd be like a 4 hour episode because there's so
Yeah,
many ways.
yeah,
But I think we're kind of agreeing today. We don't always agree, but
yeah.
we do tell the truth either way. But this just seems obvious to me because marketing. Maybe that's why it's ironic when I hear it. Is relationship is at the core of good marketing,
Mhm.
not crappy marketing though.
You know,
Crappy marketing is transactional.
yeah, one of the things though, again, it could be, um, you talked about using some of the email, social media, other ways to stay in touch with the touch points. But I would also tell you that part of that relationship, and you talked about it when you said preferences, their communication preferences, or when they want it. You kind of hit me across the head with that. It's like if you're not doing some customer research or finding out what the customers want or some of that changing, that's all part of the relationship too. It's like, how can I better understand what you want so that we can help you along the way? And so,
Yeah.
even just doing a small customer study, or I know sometimes we bash the salespeople on this, but even having salespeople get out and asking good questions of the customers to build the relationship and listen to them to find out what they need can strengthen that relationship.
Asking great questions can differentiate yourself from competitors who ask stupid questions or don't ask any questions at all.
Yeah,
Um, I think that's where the competitive advantage comes from. Is for a lot of the companies that are smaller to mid-size, you can bet that their competitors are not doing a very good job of maintaining relationships. So
yeah,
it's not like you have to be genius at this. You just need to be better than everybody else, which I find because when we do our work, we look at multiple companies and we analyze what
right,
they're doing, and so we see the picture. Um, but it's a lot of them aren't doing nothing. So it's like,
right,
well, advantage us, right? We're going to do
yeah,
something, and if the more consistent you can be, the more organized you can roll that out, the better your plan. Oh man, I said a four-letter word.
yeah,
Plan. That should have a bell. Be saying
yeah,
that stuff.
yeah,
But marketing's all about relationships, and it's also, I think, the most efficient way to get your message out. You want to make sure you have a good message. I mean, I think that's another thing I run into a lot is people are like, yeah, hey, check us out online, but don't go to our website though. Why? Because it says all the wrong stuff. It's like, again, that's not consistent.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? It's like, well, and to give everybody a break, the entire world changed in the last 3 years.
Hmm.
So if your marketing hasn't, it's whose fault is that? It's not nobody's fault. It's not your fault. I don't. I turn into my grandpa sometimes on the show. Have you noticed it? I'm like, hey, what's going on? You know. So just start spouting off in Italian if I could, but I can barely speak English. Uh, but that was a thing we heard a lot. But anyway, I'm just taking us off track. We
No, you
appreciate.
did.
So we do this every week, every Thursday at 11 o'clock on LinkedIn, and it sure has been fun. We've been, I wanted to announce this. So we've been doing this now. And Bill just joined us. I say us, so I talk about me and guests. People think, what is he, a multiple personality? Uh, I think we're going on 9.5 months, 10 months, 9.5 months
It's
of
great.
doing this almost every week, except when the power goes out suddenly,
Yeah.
which was ridiculous. I said, hey, I think the power's going to go out, and I don't know if it happened this way, but it feels like this. And I'm like, power's out, and I was
And
picturing you.
if I would have been a good co-host and worth anything, I might have been able to carry on. But you're like, oh, we don't have a good enough relationship. I don't trust him enough to be able
That's
to do
right.
that. So we need to be doing more of the social media so that I can get to know you better. Is that what it is?
Well, no, you know what it is?
Uh,
The whole infrastructure for this thing resides here on these machines. And
yeah.
it's like once the internet's off, boy, it's done and over. And so people know how we do this. It's not a big secret. We're talking to each other on Zoom, right? We're using a program called OBS Studio and puts it together and puts nice graphics on it, and then outputs it to another platform called Restream, and then that outputs it to a whole bunch of platforms. Like if you want to subscribe to us on YouTube, you could do that.
Yeah.
Pretty soon we're going to be on Apple Podcasts. We'll have to get
Yeah.
that intro ironed out to be on Apple Podcasts. What happened is, see, and you can't hear this. Bill can't hear this because he's just sitting on Zoom. All of this happens out in the virtual world. Uh, Ray Charles is supposed to keep singing when we make the
Yeah.
transition, and then we gradually roll him off. But this time I made the transition, and man, it was just me, every day, all me. And that's what I like about this show. So no, it's not. I'm really glad that you're hosting. I think this is a great topic, and I hope
Thank you.
we've been a little silly. I think having the power out for a couple days will do that to you, but
Yeah.
hopefully
Can
we've given some good points.
Yeah, can maybe I can uh I've got a couple of points I'd like to share, and then maybe I can get your reaction to this. One of the things that I think is really important with regard to the relationship building, and then I want to tell a story if I can before it, which
Please
might
do. We
enhance
have
some of
all
this.
the time in the world.
Yeah,
No, we do,
all the
because it's
listeners
just live.
will
Yeah,
shy it out, but yeah, but you and I can talk. Yeah, I get it, you
absolutely.
know.
We'll just do that.
But one of the things that I also wanted to talk about is a lot of times, it doesn't matter if it's a salesperson or an organization. So like when we're doing like a customer study, for example, Pete, we'll ask for people to give us their list or whatever so that we can survey customers or whatever the case is. I have to tell you, 9 out of 10 times that takes longer for them to get their list to us than for us to actually put together the survey, because they haven't done a good job of keeping track of people in that are their customer base. Now they might
Yeah.
know their customers, but they don't know all of the different contexts or whatever. And so one of the things I think about keeping a good relationship is keeping, having a way to keep those contacts. But the other thing, and I was going to ask you about this to get your reaction.
Maintaining your
What,
data you're talking
yeah.
about.
What about though, looking at people at different levels, because everybody goes, oh, this is the main person that bought from us. It's the purchasing man, but maybe there's other people that are influencing, or maybe others in the organization that are important to develop relationships with or stay in touch with. And people, I just see it all the time. They just don't pay attention to that. What do
Well,
you see?
I think I know why though. I think it has to do with the way that people use or don't use CRMs, right? This is all like a classification
Yeah,
issue. Like how do you not only make sure they get into the system, which would be
yeah,
the CRM, but that they get classified. And there's always been a resistance to CRMs ever since they were rolled out. And I know this because we worked with SAP back in the day when CRMs were relatively new. And one of
Yeah.
the biggest problems they had they were asking people to change how they work on a day-to-day basis, which is what is, if you're going to use a CRM, you live out of it, no doubt. Um, and I think that's still a problem. I think adoption is a big problem there. So I think that's part of it.
Mhm.
But it still results in the same problem, is that it's hard to get your data together if you're a $20 million company or a $3 million company or I've seen $100 million companies that their data was just a mess. And we're not saying, oh, shame on you, your data's a mess, clean your data, mister, or go to your room. No, we're saying that, hey, that makes it really hard to maintain relationships in an inexpensive, efficient way.
That's
Right.
exactly right. So it's like that's what's so important. Just like what you're saying is like, do we know the right people to stay in touch with and build that relationship? And if you don't have, or if you don't maintain a good list that's ongoing, it's gonna really end up hurting you in the long run.
And then, the message, what you send them needs to be really relevant to them, right? I think I
Mhm.
did a podcast a few years ago about this, about, Russian bride emails and,
Yeah.
all kinds of manner of supplements that I don't need any of that stuff. What are you sending it to me for?
Yeah.
And it's literally their strategy is to send it to everyone. It's like, hey, it's nothing personal, man. We're just terrible
Yeah.
at targeting.
Yeah.
In fact, I get emails from a client of mine who has somebody he's obviously in a cycle of emails, and they're truly just terrible, and he's just laughing at them, and he's laughing because he's just not a target.
Yeah.
So poor targeting, again, poor data. Poor data is like
Yeah.
a tree trunk that
Yeah.
branches off into a million terrible directions.
Yeah.
But it's hard to do that, and you know,
And yeah,
like
it's
everything,
yeah,
everything
absolutely.
good is hard. Um, oh, I wanted to talk about measurement too. So,
Cool.
there is this perception that, well, how do you measure that?
Mhm.
Are we talking about measuring the status of the relationships, or, you know, what's the tracking side of that?
That's a great question. Do you want to address that, or do you want me to
Well,
kind of
maybe
chime in?
no. I'm asking you. I mean, I have a theory. I
Yeah.
have, I know
I
how
I
we've done
think
it,
I
but
think I think you can, and you and I have worked with each other long enough that um, you're going to comment about the lifetime value of a customer. So I know you're going to address that,
you're
but
gonna I'll spike the ball on that. Okay.
I think you will. I think you will. But yes, you can measure it. I mean, like, okay, I'll just give you like a easy bunny. What about measuring how many referrals from an existing customer get to a new customer? You know what I mean? So are people tracking that? What's one way to measure it. So that's really good. When we've done some of our brand studies or customer studies, we'll ask them, to give us a score on the likelihood that they'd recommend you. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's a score, or that they understand your brand promise, what it is that you offer them or deliver to them. I mean, so there are ways to do that. If I was running an organization with their marketing department, I might track how many times we've touched a customer and how many times does it take that touch, before existing business expands. We get more business with them or whatever. But maybe you can jump in and then I'll react some
Well,
more.
here's the good news, though. A lot of this stuff now is a lot easier to measure and can be measured in real time. And I think you were talking about the much maligned Net Promoter Score. Uh,
Yes,
but,
yes,
asking them and then measuring it. But again, you got to have people that are willing to do it and that are
yeah,
able to record it. But nowadays, there's a lot of ways. Google has a huge thing coming, G4. They're retiring their old system of doing analytics and moving to a new
yeah,
one. And it has to
yeah,
be set up a little bit differently. But so much of this can be automated in terms of tracking. And what you're really looking at is not the numbers themselves necessarily, but the trends, right? It's like,
hmm,
how are we trending? Like, and the relationships is something that has to be measured over a period of time, usually a longer period of time than clients want to deal with. But it's like, hey, is their lifetime value? Oh, see, I said it.
you did. I
Is it getting,
I fed that to you.
is it getting longer? You know,
Yes.
I mean, you won't know that, but it's like you will start to see the average lifespan. Or, I mean, if you're tracking stuff, you start to see stuff, but you got to start tracking stuff.
Yeah.
Um, and so, I mean, all of these
Yeah.
are, I think today's moral of the story is that anything good is hard.
Yeah. I mean, and you've already talked to me about this a million times too. How many times, if you do send an email or you send something, what's the open rate? What's the response rate? Are people clicking through? I mean, all of that stuff can be measured. Like you said, there's so many good analytics out there now.
Well, we did
Um,
an episode on this idea, and we should do one again. But are you measuring the right things, or are you measuring the
yes.
things that are easy to measure? You know, I
Yep.
mean, if
Yep.
you're an old codger like me, uh, you remember the birth of the internet.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember Al Gore being in labor and all that, but I was there,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
It was quite a time. Didn't he go through Lamaze class
oh,
for
it
that?
was
I think he
yeah, it was
did.
wild. And I remember as a young, selfly appointed CEO, I said to myself, this internet thing, I think we'll give it a couple years to see if it becomes a
Yeah.
thing, right? And we
Yeah.
did that actually, and we jumped in pretty fast. But we have that perspective of being able to see that. Um, and I think once you're able to see the progression of the way the industry latched on to how we measure things, a
Yeah.
lot of the things we measure at the beginning of the whole internet deal, those were the easiest things to measure, so that's what we measured, right? And I think that there's a lot of questioning of that going on right now. Are we measuring the right inputs for the right outputs, this kind of thing? But that experience is why we exist. We're able to see things in a different way than maybe some of our very highly capable but lesser experienced brethren. Um, and so we like to share that on this program. It's kind of the idea. Why do we do this? Not to just hear ourselves talk. Although you can tell I like to hear myself talk, don't you? I can hear it in these headphones and I sound amazing.
Oh yeah. The
Uh,
crowd's cheering for
I
you
could
right
listen to
now.
that.
I can hear that crowd
Oh,
roaring, just so you
yeah.
know.
Listen to
Um,
myself all day. No, we hope that you get some value from it and that you just learn about marketing a bit and why, not to hire us necessarily, although you probably could if you had enough money, but so that you make better decisions in general about your marketing.
yeah.
Um,
What let's share just a couple of tips maybe, or like give the audience, Pete, something interesting that they didn't think about or that they should start to consider doing in their business that has something to do with relationship marketing, or something that they're not going to hear from reading an article or a blog post about this, that you've got just kind of based on your experience that will help somebody out.
I love that I thought that you were going to give those points, but you actually volunteered me to do it.
I
So
I
thank
can
you for
share a
that.
few too if you want,
No,
but
no, I think I got some. I
okay,
got one, I think.
okay, beautiful.
Uh, I think if you catch yourself saying, "Hey, our business is all relationship based. We don't need to do marketing. What's wrong with you?" Okay, that'd be one.
Yeah,
That's one bullet point. If you say that, then throw up a red flag on yourself and give Bill a call.
I don't know about that.
That's my bullet point.
Okay, I like that one.
You said you have.
Beautiful.
Give me another one, and I'll
Uh,
try to think of a better one.
like, and I know that some of the salespeople do this, but I would just ask somebody like, are you keeping track of your interactions with your customers? Say, for example, like if you even have a phone conversation with somebody, or you are a salesperson and you're out making a call and somebody tells you that they're going on a vacation, or that their wife is sick, or that somebody's having a baby or something else. I mean, are you recording that someplace in the organization or someplace for yourself so that you can remember those things when you talk to them again? I mean, it's all part of building that relationship. So I do think that is a key thing.
Well,
Um,
let's say you work for a smaller company, and let's say they
yep,
subscribe to Salesforce. Really common scenario, right? In my
yep,
opinion,
yep,
Salesforce is a big bloated mess, very complicated. It does have lots of custom fields if you know how to use them.
yep,
So this would be a custom field thing, but in
yep,
any CRM. But
yep,
sometimes if you're an individual working in that matrix, you might have to have a separate system of your own on the side. Like, for example, a
yep,
lot of times our clients may have an extensive ERP system that they
yeah,
work out of day to day, but we might have them use a simpler sales CRM like Pipedrive, for example. And no, they
Yeah.
didn't pay me to say that. I use it. It
Yeah.
just works. Uh, but those are the kinds of things I think we learn over time about. All of this theorizing is just great, but me
Yep.
as a business guy, how do I implement this shit, right?
Right.
It's simple stuff like that. It's like, hey, we're very good at quickly spotting the problems and working our way around, but that would be a workaround.
Yeah.
Let's say that you don't have control over the way some people, corporate controls the fields in their ERP, right? There's no place to put the info, right?
Right.
Well, start a separate system because,
Ex- Exactly.
I personally don't like it when people know some personal stuff about me and they're like, hey, man, happy birthday, which is going to happen a lot to me in the next few days. Uh, People that don't know me are going to wish me happy birthday, and I don't think they really care. Uh, but it is interesting if you can skillfully drop those things and like I'm terrible with names. Like I should write people's wives' names down or their names too, actually. I can't remember anyone's name. Um, that kind of information I think is really good to have. And
Yeah.
you know, um, there's other things about the status of a project. Sometimes
Yeah.
something gets put into a system and it just never gets updated. I mean,
Right.
you could have really strong processes and really strong software, but people don't follow the processes. I mean,
Yeah.
so I think we talk a lot about sort of idealized ideas of marketing, but really down in the trenches, shit's hard. That's today's
Yeah.
theme.
Yeah.
Anything
The
good is
other, the
hard.
other, the other thing that maybe you can comment on, but I've seen everybody talks about like the customer's journey. Like, do you understand the customer's journey? A lot of people look at that customer journey only from where they first hear about the company until they maybe buy something. And so it's like, what is the journey for the buying process? They don't ever say that, but that's what they mean. But I think it goes further. So like, it's like the journey is like, what do people need even after maybe they buy something from you or work with you or whatever? And so that's part of that journey too. And I don't think people understand that enough as well. Maybe you can chat about that or
Oh, that's
comment.
interesting. No, I think a whole episode could be dedicated to, the buyer's journey is as much about, I think marketing people put a lot of emphasis on the emotional parts of the buyer's journey and that sort of thing. As a
Yes.
tactician, they might think of in terms of what are the touch points and which, there's a lot of that discussion comes back to attribution and how we measure our
Mhm.
marketing. And so I think that should have its own episode.
That'd be a
Um,
fun one. I'd love that one.
but
You
I
know.
think the too long didn't read version of it is that the buyer's journey, it probably isn't what you think it is.
Mhm.
It has a lot more parts to it, and the thing that put them over the edge might not have been the thing that they discovered you with. They might have seen that email and then they went to your website. They still didn't click on nothing. Then they met you at a conference and then they gave you a call. And so in that scenario, most marketing departments would be like, hey, the website doesn't do nothing. People just call us for some reason. I don't know why, you know?
Yeah.
Or, hey, they see social media over and over and over again for 6 months. And then somebody thinks of you and refers you, relationship marketing, right?
Mhm.
Why did they think of you? Because
That's
you're
right.
in their social media feed all day. I'm guilty of it. This episode itself
Yeah.
will have a deja vu moment starting right now where we broadcast it again and again. And so that's how it works. But again, we'd say, hey, that podcast, not doing nothing, right?
Yeah.
But boy, our phone sure is ringing off the hook, and that's really, I think, the crux of it right there. So, but yeah, that attribution is actually not only a great topic, it's a big problem.
Yeah.
People are, it's like, we tried nothing and we're all out of ideas, they're not doing marketing right. They're getting bad results from it because they're not doing it right, or they're doing a little bit at a time, or they're not structuring it, or there's a million ways to get it wrong, but it's like
Mhm.
it's a self reinforcing type of situation. So hopefully this program does a little bit to break through the inch and a half of ice that's covering everything in Austin, Texas.
There
No,
you
today
go.
it's not. Last week it was.
Yeah.
But
That's
great
great.
points, man. I appreciate it. I'm gonna, You know, we usually try to go about a half hour, about 40 minutes right now. I'm going to switch to the logo stinger on the way out, and we're going to see if the theme music works or not.
That sounds great.
That's how, and we're going to be back here next Thursday. I don't believe we've picked a topic yet, but I assure you it will be scintillating, scintillating.
Oh, yeah.
Somebody just stood up over there, and I'm seeing another screen. But anyway, thank you. Great insight. Marketing, relationships, not mutually exclusive. Lots of ways that you could impact those relationships, what they're worth. And if you want to talk more about it, let us know. We're going to put links down in the comments. And if you've stayed with us for 40 minutes, I have to question your sanity.
Oh,
at
come
this
on.
point. There's got to be somebody who lasts this long. If you see the
You
curve,
can't pick on my family members like that.
this is the part that no one sees. So you could actually, at the end, you could do anything you want, right? We should work that into the program. Like at the end, we just do anything we want. And then so people will watch the whole thing to see what kind of ridiculous stuff happened at the end.
No, I was just gonna say, no, they'll just join in for the last 5 minutes to see how crazy
That's right.
we
They'll
get.
just skip ahead.
Yeah.
Exactly. All right, man. Well, let's tune out and hang on to the Zoom there. I think we have a couple other things to talk about, but this has been The Truth About Marketing. We've told it again, Bill. We've told it again. See you next week.